What would you like to share today?
Well, this wasn't in the lesson, but it was what I did during the lesson. I talked about how I had faith in the spiritual divine, and the spiritual divine is basically my inner voice, and so I always listen to it, and I do what it says.
Beautiful. Christmas is indeed such a beautiful time of year. For Christians everywhere, it is the most sacred time of year in which we celebrate the birth of our beautiful way shower, our elder brother, Jesus the Christ, 2,000 years ago. Now you might ask yourself the question, why do we keep celebrating this man who lived so long ago? But it is because of his tremendous impact on the lives back then and his radical message that transformed human beings back then. And that very same message continues to transform all of us even today. And so Christmas is a really joyful time. It's an exciting time. It's a time when we open up to the Christ within us and we go beyond all the parties and all the hoopla and all the fun of Christmas and gathering with friends and family. And we remember the sacredness of this time. For in Unity, Christmas is about the birth not so much of Jesus as the Messiah, but rather of the Christ within. And so symbolically, we open to a rebirthing of the Christ within us, which Jesus so perfectly exemplified. Now, you might notice that during this season, we will do a lot of traditional Christmas carols that sing about Jesus being the Messiah, and we'll do all kinds of things that are filled and rich with tradition. And in those ways, we join with our brothers and sisters that are Christians everywhere. And we start out by celebrating faith, as you may have picked up on today. And so to lead us in this direction, I've asked Anthony to speak to us.
When Reverend Myra asked me to speak today on faith, I knew I had to say yes, because the last 2.5 years of seminary experience is certainly a daily training in faith to be a Unity minister. When I was in earlier stage of spiritual development, I believed that faith was a belief in something outside of myself. And because such faith does not incorporate the laws of being, it's liable to discouragement and to disappointment. And as we evolve, we find a faith that cooperates with creative laws, and one that brings results that are seemingly miraculous. And so it is more than mere belief. It is the substance of that which is believed in, and it is activated by divine love. So when we get rid of thoughts of adversity or enmity, and we release those and we declare divine love, then we are beginning faith. So that's all nice theory, but let's engage our metaphysical Christian roots and see how each of you practice faith today. So by a show of hands, how many of you turned on a light switch today or plugged in an appliance? Okay, quite a bit. And also by a show of hands, how many of you are actually breathing right now? All right. Okay, if you're not breathing, raise your hand and we'll get you some help. But did you take the time as you flipped the light switch to have a belief that electricity would flow into the light bulb? Or that the medulla oblongata of your brain would signal your heart and lungs to take in oxygen? Or did you simply know that those were things that were going to happen? See, the thing is that we know we cannot not have faith. It is active in every aspect of our lives. And from anywhere from knowing who we are to turning on a light switch, the simplest form of that trust is trust. Knowing that that is happening. Emily Cady, one of the Unity Classic authors, said that faith is an instinctive trust in a higher, greater than ourselves. It's that leap before you look kind of faith. And I can appreciate that kind of blind faith because it has a place in our lives, right? For example, when I was early in my recovery from addiction, I was struggling with this concept of turning my life and will over to the care of a greater, higher power than me. And so this very patient old-timer told me, well, it's kind of like jumping out of a 13-story building and knowing God will catch you. And the lawyer in me was like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into here? And I doubted that this could be true, that I could lose even a desire to seek comfort outside of myself and find a new way to live. And then one day, very soon thereafter that, I was in the park with my 2-year-old stepson who had climbed up to the top of this wooden fort, right? And I heard the words, hey, Dad, and I swung around, and in shock, I instinctively put my arms out just as he jumped. Right? And he laughed gleefully as I caught him, and he bounded off. Right? Have you ever had one of those aha moments where things just seek in, where that which you're expected to know just comes through? See, he never doubted that I would catch him. And he literally took that leap of faith, right? Instinctively trusting that I would catch him. And this type of faith has also been described by the Latin word fiducia. And the emphasis there is not just on trust, but how we use faith to respond to life. Do we trust a prosperous God, despite any appearances of lack or limitation? Do we turn our deepest concerns and our fears over to the divine presence that animates the cosmos and everything? That is the beginning of faith. The opposite of it may appear to be a disbelief, but it's more like a mistrust, right? Because that doubt is the beginning of faith. There's nothing inhuman about doubt. We need it. And if God is one power and one presence, then that's part of God too, right? And when I see in myself doubt or in someone else, then it allows me to accord the integrity of that human experience to myself. Just as Jesus' experience in the Garden of Gethsemane, or Mary asking the Archangel Gabriel, who am I to birth this Christ consciousness? Webster's dictionary defines doubt as an unsettled opinion about the truth of the reality of something. And as metaphysical Christians, we say that doubt is at the root of our ego and our immature spiritual journey. However, when we move into that faith in conjunction with doubt, we become spiritual giants. In fact, I'll take it a step further and say that doubt is essential to faith. Faith has no easy answers. It is stubborn. It involves an ongoing struggle, a continuing questioning of things that we think we are or that we know, and in reality what the truth of those are. It goes hand in hand with doubt. Sometimes it's a conscious defiance of doubt, an affirmation. And that conscious affirmation of doubt is the beginning of faith, where we can begin, each of us. Joseph Campbell once said that we can apply it to faith. He said that having recognized the call, we need not be afraid, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the hero path, to go within. Where we thought we had found to find an abomination, we shall find a God. Where we thought to slay another, we shall slay our old versions of ourselves. Where we thought we had traveled to outward, we would come to the center of our own existence. And where we thought that we were alone, we find that we are one with all.
Such a tremendous statement about the power of faith. And yet all of us are called to have faith, are we not? If you think about the times in your life when you have really struggled to believe that God was good and that God would be the presence that you desired in those moments of need. If you think about the times when you wanted to only believe, to believe God would be enough for you and in you to move you through whatever you needed to move through. And then, if you took it one step further, and if you allowed the power of faith to fill you to dream. For the power and the ability to dream comes from us, from our Christ nature. You see, the mind, by its own virtue, is always doubting. It's always questioning. Whatever there is good, there is bad. Whenever there is right, there is wrong. And so we have those voices within us that are always the naysayers. The voices that are filled with fear and negativity. The voices that, if we allow them, they erode faith. But we are all called to live in faith. It comes from deep within and is always present. And so we look to this great power and we recognize that not only do we want to live in faith, but we want to cultivate it and move it into our being in such a way that we allow ourselves to have dreams, to have visions of good. For in those dreams and in those visions is where the Christ lives. This is a beautiful thing to know, for all of us have, if we are willing to own it, if we are willing to claim it. All of us have dreams and visions that live in our heart, that require faith to bring them forward. In fact, it is Emily Cady who said that the very desires that live in us were planted there by the Christ nature of our being so that we could know God more. If we would have the faith to continue to dream and to hold in faith that that which we desire is a blessing from God waiting to come forward if we create the space for it. Think about the things that you hold in your heart. And know that these are the things and the desires you have to know God more. They might be dreams of love, of peace, of wholeness and freedom. And the idea that you can experience and have this is given to you by the very Christ of your being if you create a space of willingness to receive your good. I want to share a video with you now that exemplifies the power and then the gift of faith.
Every now and again in this job, you meet someone who quite simply makes your spirit soar. That's how I felt when I first met Nick Vujicic. Nick was born in Australia without any arms or legs, yet he lives a life that's more joyful and more fulfilling than most able-bodied people I know. All that was missing from his world was a special lady. Well, 4 years on, Nick is now a married man. Recently, he invited me back to Los Angeles to meet the woman who's made his life complete.
Hey babe, you ever done a backflip before?
No.
No?
Never in my life.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous now. It's always... Backflips are scary.
Unique is the only word to describe Nick Vujicic and his head-over-heels approach to life.
Well, can't feel my legs.
Nick was born without arms and legs, and growing up, feared he would have to swim through life alone.
I definitely had doubts that I'd ever get married, that I'd ever meet anybody who would ever love me and spend the rest of their life with me, because I'm Prince Charming with a couple bits and pieces missing. You know, those things were important, you know, and I'd see everybody else has them, so why could I ever compete with all the other guys and ever, you know, find my princess?
Now at 29, Nick's not only found his princess, he's married her, and her name is Kanae.
I feel like a CEO.
To me, it wasn't any different falling in love with Nick. I fell in love with him the way he is now. And so because I had dated other guys and I had gone for the physical and, you know, but I was tired of that. And the moment I met Nick, I was looking for other things. And all those things, I found them in him. So that's when I felt like, wow, you know, he's not only boyfriend material, but he's like, he could be my husband.
Well, you're not your standard issue fellow, are you?
No, not exactly. We actually have gotten a lot of interesting reactions from just people while we were dating and, you know, holding hands and walking side by side. Some even people come up and
Can I
cry.
just ask how you hold hands?
Yeah, right here. We're holding hands right here, and she'd have a hand around me or jump on the back of my wheelchair.
But what sort of reactions would you get?
Well, people would come up and cry and say, now I believe in true love again.
So we can see, you remember Nick's first words, and he said, I had doubts that I would ever find anyone that would find me, that would choose me. He said, I was missing a few parts, even though I was Prince Charming. But he stepped beyond the mind, and he moved into believing in the power of love as being a reality for himself. And because he had that willingness, because he took that leap into faith, it opened the door to a great realization and fulfillment in his life. And this is the very thing that all of us are called to do, to know God more. It is the very thing that the Jewish people did when they were longing for their Messiah 2,000 years ago. You might remember that at that time they had gone through many, many years of being persecuted, of being abandoned, of wondering if God had forsaken them. And yet they were told by the prophets that there was a child that would be born, a child that would change the world. And for those that had the courage and the willingness to believe, for those that heard his message and resonated with it, their lives were radically transformed. And he indeed became their Messiah. We are called to faith. Like Nick, like the Jewish people of that time, we are called to faith. For faith is the transforming power that brings forward a vision of what we have not yet seen. It is indeed the willingness to believe and to receive our good with no evidence in front of us. This is not blind faith. It is courageous faith. And I invite you today to look at this time at what places you are called to have greater faith in your life so that Christ may come forward and bless you. Really own that for yourself and see what gifts are waiting for you. As you hold this in mind, I share with you these words by James Dillard Freeman, Unity's Poet Laureate. He tells us, you can learn to have faith. Faith is not an abstraction. It is an attitude toward life, a feeling about life. It does not come out of signs or miracles or any outward happening so much as it is birthed of inward growth. The faith we desire lives in us, and it comes forward as we nurture it. And so today and in the days forward, allow the faith within your being to fill you, to allow your spirit to know God even more fully. For this is the gift all of us have before us, if only we would have the faith to receive it. Merry Christmas, and God bless.